All right, we're in Daniel chapter 2. Brothers, we're gonna look at, and sisters. I heard some sisters in the background. We're gonna look at Daniel chapter 2. We're gonna read it in groups of 10. We're gonna read it in groups of 10. Dom, go ahead. You can start first. First 10 verses of Daniel chapter 2.
All righty. Can you guys hear me clear?
Yep.
All right. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to shew the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, or King, live forever. O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will shew the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream, with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye shew the dream, and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore shew me the dream, and the interpretation thereof. They answered again, and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will shew the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the things is gone from me. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you, for ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me. Till the time be changed. Till the time be changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can shew me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can shew the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that acts such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean.
All right. You see anything that stands out?
Now I'm gonna let you guys take it away.
Anybody else? All right. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I don't got nothing really profound to bring out. Just seeing how important this dream is to Nebuchadnezzar. Like you know, because I know we pretty much know what the dream is already, but like I never get like why he cares that much about this dream that he's willing to kill all his wise men and all this stuff for an interpretation of it. Because here in the dream, it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound worthy of being disturbed enough to want to kill people to find, to find out what it means. Like it just, I don't understand. You know, the emphasis that he has on this dream, except for the only thing being the fact that it's not necessarily just a dream. I feel like Yah is probably pricking him, and that's this urge that he has to get an understanding of it, not necessarily from the dream itself, but there's another conviction feeling, I guess, maybe, because I don't see the dream by itself being strong enough or important enough to make him go to the extremes that he's going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Dom, you ever in it?
Yeah, I mean, I like what Mike was saying, like why was it so important? Like to bounce off of that, I would just ask, like, what is the difference between, like that dream and then how we dream and today, like, our dreams, our personal dreams, because sometimes we dream about whatever, and like can't take our dreams as serious as Nebuchadnezzar is taking it. You know what I mean? Like, how do we know when a dream is being something that's foreshadowing the future or something like that? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that's a different question though. That's everything should be considered. The Bible teaches us that we need to test all spirits, everything that happens. Sometimes we have somebody could be just saying like something completely out of the ordinary. You still have to test it to make sure if you're the one that needs to receive understanding, in that situation. Kefa, you want to say something real quick?
Yeah, number one, Yahuwah definitely, Yahuwah is kings of all kings. And he's the one that put kings there for a reason and take them out. So I believe that, this is, I believe that this is one of his first dreams. I believe that this is the first time he had a dream like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that Yah is in his heart and his ruah. You know what I'm saying? He's trying to do something. So I believe that this is part of Yahuwah's calling when he described that he's kings of all kings and he's the one that directs man's hearts to whatever he wants them to do according to his will. So I believe it's a pricking of Yah, as a pricking of this what is it, Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. That Yah is pricking on his heart because he's trying to guide him to what Yah is trying to do. So I believe it's a calling of the rule upon King Nebuchadnezzar on what he's trying to direct him into his will, because he's king of all kings.
Yeah, I agree with what Mike was saying about the pricking of the heart too. Go ahead, JP.
What verse did we read up to?
1 to 10. Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 to 10.
Oh, okay. I gotta wait then. I'll wait till the next round.
All right. So I do see. Here's the interesting thing. So verse 1 tells us, it says that he dreamed the dream, and then it says that his spirit was troubled. So he was pricked. There was something that was messing with him in this particular dream, that it says, and his sleep broke from him, meaning that it was messing with him. He couldn't sleep. But here's the worst part for him. In verse where does it say? In verse 3, it says, and the king said to them, I've dreamed the dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. But here's the problem. In verse, is it 7 or 8? 8. It says, the king answered and said, I know of a certainty that you would gain the time, because you see that the thing is gone from me. He couldn't remember it. So that's another thing that was troubling him. I know we've all been in situations where there's something that we're trying to remember and it just bothers you until you figure out what is it that was on your mind. It says that it was gone from him in another verse further up as well. I think that in verse, show the interpretation. Oh, verse 5. It says, and the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make it known to me the dream with the interpretation of it, you shall be cut into pieces and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So it wasn't only that it was just some type of crazy dream. It was a dream that made him break his sleep. He remembered it was something important, which is the pricks, I believe, is the conviction of the spirit, but it was something that he couldn't remember either. So it was bothering him even more, and that's aggravating, I think. And if you're a king, you have that ability to like cut people's heads off or make people do whatever. But I know that I've been in a situation where I've been trying to remember something and it feels like I remember it, but I don't remember it, and it bothers me.
I agree.
Not to this extent where, you cutting everybody's heads off and stuff, but to a certain degree of aggravation, you know what I mean? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm noticing something else. It seems as if he's actually, if he keeps getting this dream, it doesn't seem that this is the first dream or the only dream. It seems as if he's kind of being tormented with it, because if we go to
Mm-hmm.
verse verse 1, I think.
Yeah.
Ow, hold on, 1 or 2.
One, it says dream dreams.
Yeah, plural. And even though the Hebrew words are two different words. One is shalom, dream, and then the other word is shalom or kalom or something. So it's one of them's plural, I guess. So he dreams dreams. So I would assume he's dreaming this same dream. So as if he's kind of being taunted by this dream, which could also give an understanding to why he wants to interpret it so bad. Like, we keep having the same exact dream over and over
Yeah.
and over. Like, oh my gosh, okay, what does this mean? That could be it too.
Yeah. And also, like, it's the same thing. It keeps breaking his sleep. So it's not like it's just one day and he can't sleep for that one day. It's like he keeps not being able to sleep. And then on top of that, he doesn't remember the dream that's bothering him. So after I see it as after a while, he's like, you guys, you say you're magicians, you need to figure it out, And I think that's another thing to show another thing that the Ruach was doing to show him how false these other dudes were. These magicians and astrologers, okay, this is what you are, then you do this. You know what I mean? And also I think that Yah did that not only to test these magicians, but also to give Daniel that opportunity for Yah to work through him. Because if Yah is giving the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, obviously he knows he's gonna want the interpretation. So obviously he's gonna use Daniel instead of these magicians. You know what I mean? So I think this was like a setup for Daniel. It was a setup for Daniel to be known as a man of Yah, and for him to, especially the integrity that Daniel has already, to show that he is. I think last time when we read chapter 1, we saw that Nebuchadnezzar already met with Daniel and saw that they were already 10 times smarter than the rest of them. So he's constantly given these opportunities for Daniel. So we see these times. There's like a time span in which Yah is setting things up to give Daniel the opportunity to glorify Yah. And I think that we need to also recognize that as well. Like there's things that's being set up so we can end up showing the world who Yah is.
I agree. You see, Yah, it's amazing because, we look at it all over the scripture. Yah works the time frames when it comes to his prophets. This is the way he works. He uses instruments and whatever time frame that he's trying to work on, he uses his people, his prophets, to be able to establish his name to be glorified. So we see that with Daniel, we see that with Moses and many prophets, that his name always to be glorified in whatever time frame of history that he's trying to, basically known his name.
Right.
That's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. Before we move forward, there's something interesting I see in verse 4. Daniel chapter 2, verse 4, it says, Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell your servants to dream, and we will show the interpretation. So they're speaking in a different language right now. They're speaking in Syriac. That's what it says in King James, but it's really Aramean. Aramean is the language of Aram. Anybody know who Aram is? Pop quiz.
It's gonna be one of the forefathers, isn't it? It's from
Of
Earth.
course, it has to be because it's
It's
the name
from
of the
Earth.
language.
Canaan. The Canaan.
No. Not Canaan. It has to be a forefather. They named the land after him, then they named the language after the person that founded it. Aram. Genesis chapter 10 show Aram is Shem's son. So the Arameans or the Syrians is actually Israel's cousins.
Well, they're Chaldeans, and where did Abraham come from? The land of the Chaldeans.
Yeah, there we go. Abraham came from his uncle's land. That's why he sent, remember, he sent his servant to go find him a wife back at his uncle's land, which is Aram. This is where Babylon is where Rebecca was found. Babylon is where who else? Rachel and Leah was found. Laban is from Syria. So Aram is their uncle. So because it was Aram and then Arphaxad. Arphaxad is where Israel is from the line of Arphaxad, but Aram is the brother of Arphaxad. So they're cousins.
It's amazing.
Babylonians is cousins. Abraham comes from Babylonia. He was staying in his uncle's land. That wasn't his original land. That was his uncle's land. So that's Wesley in the background.
Just listening.
All right. So let's continue. The next 10 verses. I'm going to read the next 10 verses. And Kefa. Yeah. Verse 11 to 20.
And the matter that the sovereign is asking is difficult, and there's no other who was able to reveal it to the sovereign except the mighty ones, whose dwelling is not with flesh. But of this, the sovereign was enraged and very wroth, and gave order to destroy all the wise one of Babel. So that the decree went out, and they began killing the wise ones. And they saw Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the chief of the sovereign's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise ones of Babel. He answered and said to Arioch, the sovereign's officer, why is the decree from the sovereign so urgent? So Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. And Daniel went and asked the sovereign to give him time, and he would show the sovereign the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Ananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, to seek compassion from Elah, from the Elah of the Shamaim, concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions should not perish with the rest of wise ones of Babel. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in the night vision, and Daniel Barak, the Elah of the Shamaim, which is El, of course, Yahuah. Daniel responded and said, Baruch be the name of Yah forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his.
Whoa.
It's funny.
Was it revealed to him at night, guys? Nah.
It's amazing how they use Elah as El in this translation. So
was that in verse 20 or 19?
Yeah, 20 and verse 8.
Elah, yeah.
They use the word
Elah is the Phoenician way of saying Elah or Elohim or Eloah. So it's not necessarily Hebrew, but Hebrew derives from this land here. So you can't really disconnect the connection between Elah and Eloah. Right? Is that the connection? Let me see. Elah, and then it says H433. Yeah, Eloah.
I mean, sometimes it's like they use Eloah or Elohai or
it's different versions of it derives from one another, but this is the Babylonian actual. This is the Chaldean version of it, but it's not distant from the Hebrew because Abraham spoke this language.
Eloah isn't the singular of Elohim?
Yeah, Eloah is a singular, but there's also it derives from Allah. Yeah, it keeps going back. It keeps going back. Hebrews is like connected to the Canaanite language. Like,
Well, yeah.
it goes back. So a lot of times we're not looking at ancient depiction of certain words. So we're looking at more, well, not modern like our day, but we're not looking at the origin, because we're in the scripture. It actually evolves in the scripture. Like Baal was used by the Israelites. Like somebody named their child Baal. Like it wasn't a name of a god. I think there's a lot of confusion, and that's why, like, when we see stuff like Allah, it gets a little bit confusing, because we're looking at Hebrew in the way that we see it now as the origin way that it was used. Go ahead, Mike.
You said what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, good points. I think again, to go off of what you were saying earlier about all these opportunities, Yah opens up for Daniel in the eyes of the king. This is where we kind of see it coming into fruition. He's not willing to grant his magicians and wise men the time to be able to guess what his dream was. But apparently, as soon as Daniel comes in and asks for time to do it, he gives it to him. No issue. We don't see him fighting against it. He was accusing his magicians and wise men of he's pretty much calling him out on trying to play him to buy time so that he forgets. So he doesn't trust them, but clearly he trusts Daniel. The fact that he was just immediately willing to give him the time that the magicians and the wise men were asking for, that he denied. So it shows a level of trust and respect there.
I like that you pointed that out, because he was already, like I said, from chapter 1, he was already recognized by the king. So when he was like looking at these dudes, like, let me, testing them out, it says that in verse 14, it says, and Daniel answered, no, not verse 14, that this dude Arioch
16
was gonna go and kill them right away. Like verse 15, there we go. It says, and he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, like, why is the decree so hasty from the king? So it's like he came over there to be like it's about to happen right now. Everybody's about to die. But I like that you pointed out, like, when they asked, he said, oh, you trying to buy yourself time? If you guys are magicians, you guys should know. But then when Daniel asked, I like that you pointed it out. I didn't catch that. When Daniel asked, he was just like, okay, take that time. So you see how the representation, like when we represent Yahuwah, it has an impact on other people. Like, other people find favor in us because we're reflecting something that they don't normally see with other people. And that's what makes it very important for us to make sure that we're representing Yah correctly every day in front of different people, because people are noticing. They will notice the difference between these everyday people and the people of Yah. Go ahead, JP.
Right. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
JP, you on mute?
Oh, are you calling on me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. One thing I was seeing that's interesting is that with Daniel, he came out and he like the first thing he did was like he went to Yah, you know what I mean, for the understanding. And I thought that was a great point that you had brought up that I never seen, that that he didn't even remember his dream. So that was like a whole man, because the Chaldeans that he had talked to, and he's like, they're about to get cut in pieces, you know, and they didn't even know what the dream was. Like, they didn't have no clues or nothing. So I thought that was amazing, but I never seen that. But yeah, but to the point, I was looking up that word Allah, and it's interesting because that word God in the scriptures is never used like how you see in the King James. It'll say the Lord thy God. You don't ever get it like that. It's never you don't ever see God's name next to it. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that can lead to in our studies if I go look into it more, but it's always like saying like the Allah of the Shaimaim. It'll say like stuff like that, but it won't ever say like Yahuah, like thy Allah. It won't say like that. So I don't know. I don't know if that plays any part on anything, but it was just interesting because it seems like it's written, like you said, it was written Aramaic, right? Or something else, a different language. Is Daniel written originally in another language?
No, the people that were talking in Syriac, they were talking in the Chaldean language. That's the language Abraham spoke. Abraham spoke that language. So you would see a correlation with the Israelites and the Syriac because they're from the same people.
Right. And because I noticed like a lot of times they used it in Daniel and Ezra. They used a lot of the Allah, that word, that particular word. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Like I said, I don't know where that leads into the studies and things. I still got to look into it more, but yeah, because it doesn't really say mighty ones like it would in another translation. So it would really just say God or Allah. So, I mean, it's just interesting. I don't know, I was just thinking about the, the Aramaic language, you know. So, Allah, you know how they say Allah. So, all right, bro, that's about it.
It's Wesley just reminded me that Allah is actually how the Arabics say God, because Allah is the name of their God, but Allah is actually the word God that the Arabics use even today. So they say Ella Allah. They say Ella Allah, and they're saying the God Allah. So it's interesting that the Chaldean word, which is Babylon, which is modern day Iraq, they still use the word Allah in their Arabic language. So that's just something interesting that.
That's a good one. But I also love. I wanted to add with Daniel. I love his attitude also when it came to this information with Nebuchadnezzar, when he was able to share with his companions, with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like, it's kind of like felt like, what you guys think about this? You know what I'm saying? Like he's sharing the information about what you think about this and about what the dream is about. So I love the attitude of him sharing the information with his companions and in a sense of humility, saying that what you guys think about this, of course. And then you see how his attitude was like, you know what? I need to give this to Yahuah. Because he understood the need. He understood that wisdom and understanding comes from Yah. Even though, even Daniel, knowing that he was a wise man, or whatever it is, everybody knew him as a wise man, but he knew that all wisdom that he had, that he was able to give it to others, that came from Yahuah. He's the one that gave the interpretation, the seekers of all things. So I love the humility of Daniel.
Yeah. Plus, I would let my friends know we about to die too, so we better get down and pray. We need to be praying right now, everybody. Everybody. But Daniel, I like that. Yeah, he didn't take it upon himself. He brought it to his brothers, and they all prayed. Even though it says specifically that Yah showed it to Daniel in the night dream, he brought it to them. Yeah, so I see that, Kef. Definitely. All right, let's move forward. Getting deep, pulling out some stuff. Then pull out. Now we're looking at verse 21 to 30. Daniel chapter 2, verse 21 to 30. Yeah. All right. It says, and he changed the times and the seasons. Let me read verse 20 just to get context. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of Elohim forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, or Allah. And he changed the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is the darkness, and the light dwells with him. You notice it mentioned darkness first, right, guys? All right, let's look at verse 23. I thank you, I praise you, O you Elohim of my fathers, who have given me wisdom and might, and have made known unto me now what we desired of you. For you have made known unto us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. And he went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. And the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king have demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a Elohim in heaven that reveals secrets to and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Your dream and the vision of your head upon your bed are these. Then it says in verse 29 and 30, as for you, O king, your thoughts came into my mind upon your bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that reveals secrets makes known to you what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation, the king, and that you might know the thoughts of your heart. This is deep, man. This is the sound. If you want to hear humility, if you want to hear respect and integrity, like this is like, I want to sound like Daniel. You know, when it says in Matthew chapter 10 that we're going to be brought before kings and councils, I want to be wise and sound like Daniel, man. He just sounds so, it's like so respectful. Like, how can you even, he could tell the king the truth to his face, and just because of the amount of respect that he's showing, like, how can you like come at him any negative way? It's crazy.
I was gonna say what's cool is that every aspect he revealed God.
Right.
Every aspect. Yeah.
There was nothing that he was taking upon himself, any kind of credit or glory for anything. This is a perfect example of an individual giving all to Yah, all the glory to Yah. That's, yeah. Anybody want to say anything before we dissect these verses? Yeah, I mean, to me, is simply straightforward. He's not only, praising Yah, but he's also revealing him before the king, and he's letting them know. Let me see. Where it says in verse 27, it says, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king had demanded cannot the wise astrologers, the magicians, or the soothsayers show the king. but there is an Elohim in heaven that reveals secrets and makes known to King Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. And then in verse 30, again, the humility in verse 30. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me because of any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, that you might know the thoughts of your heart. So now we see that Yah has a greater purpose, because Daniel is revealing that he's not only revealing this to me to show you, but he's also trying to save these magicians.
Mm-hmm.
Is interesting because it says it's for their sakes also. So in our minds, we're like, oh yeah, the magicians, they're supposed to be killed according to Torah. They, the astrologers, they're wicked. They need to be destroyed. But here we have Yah saving them. Because anything could have happened. They could have went and cut everybody's heads off, and when they got to Daniel, they would have gave him more time. You see what I'm saying? They could have done anything. Anything could have happened. But we see here that Daniel is revealing that it was also for their sakes, to preserve their lives as well, for them to see the wisdom of Yah,
I agree.
for them to accept the wisdom of Yah. You know what I mean? So it's like Yah does not stop. He's not only going for Nebuchadnezzar. He's not only going for his people. He's going for these astrologers, these magicians, calling them all to see the glory of Yah.
And I'm going to take it a little further, too. And because of this, think about this. Because we all know that Yah is the Elohim of the past, present, and future. Because of this, think about what happened in the time of Mashiach with the Magi's, with the wise man.
Mm-hmm.
These were Babylonians. They came from this same people. You get what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. So these wise men were connected to these people. This is why they knew Yahuwah, because of what happened at this situation. So you see how Yah works.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had that question for a long time. Like, how these guys from the East look in the stars and they could tell what's going on. But you have Daniel there that know how Yah created the stars and the sun and the moon. He was probably able to give wisdom to all these people over here, especially since he was put in that position of power. I can imagine Yah put him in a position to teach other people the wisdom that comes from Yah, But praise Yah, he's the Yah of the nations. Just like how Abraham is a father of many nations, Yah is the Elohim of many nations. And we see him trying to save the nations, trying to bring them in, trying to graft them in, even in Babylon. So praise Yah. Praise Yah, we see the work that he's doing then, and we can know that he's doing that now, All right. Daniel 2, verse 31 to 40.
Is it my go now?
Yeah. Go ahead. I was gonna say something, but no, go ahead.
Unless, of course, somebody else wants to read.
Anybody? Oh,
brother. Marshall.
All right. So Marshall, you do 31 to 40. Wesley, you do 41. Is that the end of it? 41 to 41 to 49. All right. So 31 to 40, Marshall. 41 to the end, Wesley.
I'll read the commentary.
I don't trust your Oxford commentary, man. Go ahead.
You said I do 31 or
Daniel chapter 2, verse 31 to 40.
Okay. Are we all set?
Yeah. Yep, all set.
You, O king, sawest, and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. You saw until that the stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them into pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken into pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we tell the interpretation thereof before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the heir of heaven has given you a kingdom, power and strength and glory. Wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven has he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. And after you will arise another kingdom inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which will bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom will be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all things, will it break in pieces and bruise. Hallelujah.
Okay. Marshall,
Hallelujah.
you got a lot there. So is there
Yes.
there's something that stands out there for you?
There's one that does stand about when the rock that comes without hands, that no hands have formed it, but he comes from heavens, and he destroys the whole mountain or the whole kingdom. But like, it's amazing how the whole kingdom, though it's 4 different kingdoms, it seemed like he's speaking about, though it's 4 kingdoms, and then there's a small one that comes as the small one that comes out is the last one with the feet, but he talks about one kingdom. So like, as Babylon being the head, he's the king of like all he remains the king of all this kingdom, though they have different names like Babylon, Greece, and Persia, and so forth. But how when the stone destroys the temple, it says that they will be drawn, like they will go away like the wind. And Psalm 1 is testifying of it, how the ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore, the ungodly will not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahuwah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly will perish.
Right. Right. So definitely we understand that the nations that's being destroyed by the stone are the ungodly. Definitely those who have rejected Yah, have moved away, have rejected Yah, because we see that Yah is reaching out for them, calling out for the nations. Excellent. We're gonna dissect, and I know, Marshall, you touched on it a little bit. We're gonna talk about the different elements of the metal which nations they reveal. Because remember, this is all of the nations that will be in rulership all the way to the end. There's no reason to add different nations in here. Okay, guys? We're not going to add nations into where Yah is revealing what nations will be, working throughout history. But let me let Dom go. Go ahead, Dom.
Well, I mean, what you just said, I was just gonna ask. In verse 40, is that talking about who? But I don't know if I should say it now or no.
I don't know. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, is verse 40 referring to the United States?
Let's see.
That's why I was gonna put a pause on it, because you just said what you said.
Let's see. See here specifically. All right. Let's see. Because remember, there's a lot in this book.
It's been a while, John. It's been a while.
There's a lot in this book, and to me, Daniel and Revelation is one book. So it's taking us to Revelation right now. You want to say?
Well, I was going to say, do you want to continue?
Let's read the rest, because there's only 9 other verses which are key parts in the interpretation. So that way we don't have to try to interpret this ourselves because Daniel's about to interpret it. So Wesley's going to read the rest. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 41, it says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out from the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation therefore sure. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth that it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors over all wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he sat Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king.
All right. So he answered the interpretation of the stone. He gave a little bit more detail of the feet, the iron mixed with clay, and what that means. So we're going to look at these specific interpretations, and we're going to apply it to nations that we already know one by one they represent. And if we don't know, we're about to know. Dom, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna point out in verse 43 it says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay.
Right.
So I kind of like to me it's kind of like the separation between God's people and the evildoers. I kind of looked at it like that because we were made from clay in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So it was I just thought that was kind of crazy because
you always surprise me.
The iron would be referring to the evildoers because they can't mix with God's people because we're supposed to be set apart. So I thought that was kind of crazy.
I like your connection. I like add 42 to that verse 43. Verse 42 says, the toes and the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken.
Right.
So there's a broken or inferiority to the clay. That's why it says miry clay. The word miry means hard. A potter is unable to use hard clay. So that hard clay has to represent something that used to belong to the potter that's no longer his anymore, that he cannot use anymore. So you're getting it. You're getting it. And I like that because I don't want to tell you, I want you to see it in the verses. And you saw it. You saw that connection there because you have a verse. We are refers to as the potter's clay, but potter's clay is always soft, so it could be molded.
Yeah, that's the difference. You have the potter's clay, which it's molded, easy to work with, and then the miry clay, which you literally cannot work it anymore. You're hardened, and I call it stubborn type situation.
Yeah.
But
hardened heart.
Exactly.
You with hard clay, the potter literally throws it in the fire and either breaks it or throws it in the fire. So let me see what Mike got. Mike, We got to go back up to the gold, but let's see what Mike sees.
Actually, I don't want to interrupt mine's it's about the verses, but it's just a different topic on the verses. So just continue with this, and then I'll bring it up later.
You sure?
Yeah, because it's not about deciphering with the images. I don't want to distract from that.
All right, but you're gonna remember though, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing, right? We're at the gold, right? Where does it tell us the interpretation of the gold? I know it says
32.
32.
Mm-hmm.
It says that he is the head of gold.
It says the image's head was of gold, his breast was silver. So if you guys need a pen and paper, which I needed a pen and paper when I was trying to remember this. Head of gold, his breast and arms were silver, his stomach and thighs were brass, and his legs or his shin area down to was iron, and then his feet was iron mixed or
his feet and toes.
Right, feet and toes, right.
The 37 actually shows what was the interpretation.
Okay, yeah.
Referring to what the gold head was.
Yeah. All right. So 32 says, "You, O King, King of Kings, for the Elohim of heaven have given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. Wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heavens, have he given into your hand and have made you ruler over all. You are the head of gold." So Babylon, including the king, represented by the king of Babylon, is the gold. Everybody understands, according to Daniel, as we read on, we're going to get a little bit more detail. So I believe we can actually skip ahead to get the interpretation. Everybody knows the kingdom that took over Babylon, right?
Medo-Persia, yeah.
Okay.
I actually have something to bring up on that. So
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we see Babylon being the head. It's one piece. It's the head.
Right.
Then we see the chest and the arms are silver.
Right.
There's two arms. There's two components to it. You have Medo and you have Persia, because a lot of people just say Persia or Medo-Persia, not understanding that's a combination of two forces.
Yes.
And I just want to bring that in because that's going to tie down. Yes. I don't really hear people mention that when it comes to the feet or the legs. They're one unit, but there's two parts to it.
I wasn't even going to mention that because I didn't really.
Wait until we get to the legs.
I didn't hear what you just said.
I said I wasn't even going to say that because I didn't even think of it that way. For it to mention specifically, you notice how it's mentioned. It says legs, it says breasts, but then it says the chest and arms specifically. And the Medes and the Persians, Mike is absolutely right, are two different forces or nations that combine together.
They're actually saying in the history books they went hand in hand, so that's actually kind of funny.
The interesting thing is that Cyrus was the king of Persia. It was Persia that took over, and Yah actually. The crazy part is Yah prophesied Cyrus' existence in the book of Isaiah, like called him by name before he was
400, 500 years before he was born.
And said that Cyrus was going to take over. It says Assyria, but when you look at prophetically, Assyria actually took over Babylonia, the area. So when it says that Cyrus was going to take over Assyria, it actually was referring to a prophecy saying that Cyrus, king of Persia, would take over Babylon. So the next king, which everybody hears about, is Darius. You know, Darius was a Mede. He was a king of the Medes. So you have the Medes and the Persians combined in order to take over Babylonia. That's what they call the land that was possessed by Babylon. And we see that in Daniel. We're going to run into that because we're going to see when Persia literally takes over Babylon later on in the book of Daniel. What we got next? Now we have We have, what does it say?
We did chest and arms, and now we're going on to
the third kingdom, verse 39. After you shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. Brass. What kingdom took over Persia? Now, the scriptures is all written during the times of these kingdoms, even the Apocrypha. So,
Just think of it as a greasy belly.
certain books, right?
certain books.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about the Greek, like Maccabees and stuff like that.
Yeah, not the other hand.
Not the other stuff that's written before Adam was born. Anyway, but yeah. So after the silver comes the brass. Anybody knows the kingdom of the brass, the kingdom that directly comes after the Medes and the Persians?
Just think of it as a greasy belly.
Syrian.
Alexander the Great, to be exact.
Greece. Alexander the Great. It was the first king of Greece. Later on in Daniel chapter 8, it will literally go dissect the Persian and the Greece war between them two. And also we know that the Apocrypha of the Maccabees, the books of Maccabees, was written after the Persian kingdom, during the rule of is it Antiochus? Antiochus, one of the kings of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So we see in scripture, we have the Babylonian captivity, we have the Persian captivity, then we have the Greek rule and oppression, right? And now we have verse 40, where it says, "And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks into pieces and subdues all things, the iron shall break all these, and shall it break in pieces and bruise." What's the last kingdom we see in scripture that rules?
The Romans.
Rome.
Which, by the way, was famous for their iron swords.
Yeah.
Just throw that out there. And yeah.
It's like the characteristics. Matter of fact, the Greco-Roman era, but we're gonna that's in Daniel chapter 7. Well, we're gonna get to Daniel chapter 7 later.
You're skipping here.
So we have Babylon, gold. We have Medo-Persia, silver. We have Greece, brass. We have Rome, iron.
Well, Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire, iron.
With 2 legs.
Now we have
I'm sorry, Jack. Can you say that again?
We have the gold head, which is Babylon. We have the silver chest and arms, which is Medo-Persia. We have the stomach and the thighs of brass, which is Greece. And then now we have the iron, which is Rome. So we have the captivity of Babylon. Then we see Persia take over Babylon in scripture. And then we see the Greeks take over Persia in scripture. And now we see the Romans during the time of Messiah took over Greek, amalgamated with Greece. So now we're on the very last portion of history of nations that will be in power, and it's iron mixed with clay. So the iron was the Roman Empire. All right. So iron doesn't change from being Rome.
No.
Right. So when you go down to the feet, you have iron mixed with hardened clay.
Historically, I'm just going to throw a historic thing in here. So Rome had a type of democracy, a republic type situation, and it is the only one that is still being used today in our time. Hence why the toes, I personally believe the toes is the iron mix in there, because every nation that's a democracy or republic nation, has this same exact structure, belief of how to run the country.
Meaning that a lot of countries copied off of this nation, including our country.
The Catholic Church, in other words.
The spirit of the Roman system is basically
The
Roman system.
it's spread throughout the nation, throughout the world. The spirit, basically the religious system, the system, the
You-
spirit of wrong.
You want to know something interesting about the history of the Catholic Church? The history of the Catholic Church is that they used to keep the Torah.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church, because you can't change the Torah unless you used to keep it. You don't change it to something else unless you had it a certain way first. So when you look at the Catholic Church, the origin of the Catholic Church was the Greek assemblies that were actually being taught by Paul and the apostles. Like they literally can trace their history back to around Paul's day, which is, I believe, is like 90 to 100 years after Messiah. Now, if they changed by law, when you look through scriptures, they changed times and laws from the feast and the Shabbat
Getting to Daniel 7.
to Roman.
Daniel chapter 7.
Yeah, that's Daniel chapter 7.
Mean, historically, too, there's only one thing that's ever changed the actual law of Yah. I mean, there's only one system that actually has done that, and no other system has done that.
No other religious system has ever even tried to change.
No other religious system.
I disagree.
Can you say why?
Yeah. I would definitely say the state of Israel has, and not even the Ashkenazi Jews alone, of course them too, but actually Israel, like actual Israel before they were dispersed, ever since they came out of Babylon with the Talmud, they've been changing laws and adding laws and replacing. I mean, they've been doing that. So I would say the Catholic Church would be the second ones to do that.
Well, technically, they didn't remove any laws. All they did was put their laws on top of what was already there.
Well,
they still keep the laws that's there, but they just put some extra for themselves. Unlike this particular person, Daniel 7, actually changed it completely, and it wasn't just one aspect of it. It was also the feasts or the seasonal assemblies.
Well, going off of what Yahusha was saying to the scribes and Pharisees, he said that they did that very exact thing by implementing some of the laws that they did. He said that they caused people to break the actual commandments. So he attributed that to them.
It says to make void the law of Yah.
And what is void? Cancel.
Right. Now, here's the thing. They didn't change anything. They didn't say this is now a feast. They didn't say this is now a Sabbath. They didn't say this is Messiah. They didn't do any of those things. What they did was they added on top of that and they put one over what Yah had. The other one changed it.
And the void, I believe he was referring to as faith, because they're doing it faithless.
Secondly, it's iron. You can't get Rome out of there.
Oh no, of course I don't. So this is where I go with this. This is what I'm saying, because it is absolutely Rome. That's not a
No,
it's Rome
mixed with clay.
Yeah, it's iron mixed with clay. What is the clay? Who do we see in scripture that Yahusha constantly showing, and even before Yahusha, throughout scripture continues to be hardened? It's Israel. Israel, Yah's children who disobeyed. They are the clay that turns hardened. We have Hellenized Jews in Rome. It's like we wonder how the Roman Catholic Church started. Like they just stole the Bible, or they stole the scriptures and started, implementing it. No, I believe that Hellenized Jews were teaching them. The fact that Hellenized, they're mixing themselves with the iron, and they literally were the clay. They were Yah's people. They were Yah's people, man made from,
Historically, the Roman Catholic Church persecuted Jews. Not Messianics either. So that wouldn't.
They persecuted Jews who wouldn't Hellenize.
Historically, it wouldn't make sense that they would learn from the people that they persecuted.
Well, they only persecuted the ones who wouldn't mess with them, the ones who refused to Hellenize.
No, that's not all right. Look at it. What history are you getting that from, though? Like where are you seeing that? See, the thing is, the clay wasn't only exclusive to Jews. The clay represented everybody that Yah was molding. We just read that Yah was reaching out for the nation.
I understand that. I understand that.
So now if you read Galatians, he says in Galatians chapter 4, I believe, he says, "Oh, foolish Galatians, who have easily bewitched you." Who is he talking to? Are those Jews? No, those are not Jews. Those are Greeks. And who is he talking about not being hard-headed? He was talking about the Greek believers.
But here's the thing. He's not just talking to Galatians in general.
Believers. He's talking believers is the clay. Jews.
Yes. That's my point, though. So that's why I say Israel. That's why I say Israel, because Israel is not just Jews. Israel are those who believe. But then, okay, you take the Galatians. When they came to believing, they became grafted in. Israel. If they're bewitched, they're literally, by definition, they were clay, and now they've been hardened.
No, here's now Hellenized Jews were never clay. That's what I'm saying. Like clay is believers, like people who follow.
At one point you were a child of Yah, and to a point where you're not, which isn't exclusive to a group.
So when you're looking at scripture, when you're looking here, it says it mentioned them as potter's clay first, and then it refers to them as hardened clay or miry clay after. There's a transition between people who actually followed, not just people called Jews, people who followed Yah and was molded by him, to turn and become hardened. And that incorporates, you can incorporate Jews, you can also incorporate any believer, Muslim. All believers.
Which I do. I do.
That has turned away, which we know that the majority actually, historically, like there's a dark ages. The reason why there's a dark ages is because the majority of the believers, whether it's Greek or Jews, turned from Yah and has adopted Roman traditions. You have to acknowledge the iron is mingling. The iron is mingling with the clay. The only thing is, it's not gonna, it's gonna keep on trying to mingle until that stone breaks it into pieces. It says here that it will not fully connect. It will not fully mingle.
Mm-hmm.
But let me let Marshall go ahead. Go ahead, Marshall. And then I'm gonna go back to you, Mike. Oh, hold on, Marshall. You muted.
I was just about to go look into when the stone comes from the heavens, but through the conversation that you guys were having, actually, I was gonna ask, who do you consider to be Mystery Babylon?
You mean the woman? The woman with
Yeah.
the forehead?
The woman with the name on her forehead.
I believe that the woman represents like a body of a religious body. I believe the woman represents a religious body.
Because it talks about talk about the covenants that Paul talked about. He said there's two covenants, but one covenant is like there's two women in one covenant, but there's one woman in one, and she's free. But he talk about Jerusalem and Arabia. So then there's Hagar and there's Jerusalem. So there's a Jerusalem, or rather there's an Israel that is in bondage, but there's another Israel that is free. Right. So then it's not so much of the physical place, but it's this the spiritual sense. But because I feel like we sometimes get it confused when we want to talk about the woman and the beast. You know, it's many people say Rome is the mystery Babylon, but then they also say like Rome is the beast. But like, wait, who is actually where did our Lord were crucified? You know, because there's so much that I believe we have to follow the crumbs when we
and that's where the inconsistent comes, because if you can't have the woman being the beast, that doesn't make sense. The woman is a religious body, and the beast is a political body. When you look at scripture, the beast is always referred to as what type of political body. Now, a political body or a kingdom can also be religious, but there's a specific religious power. And in scripture, like you said, the covenants is always referred to as a woman. Matter of fact, Yah's people is referred to as his bride. So, and the woman in Revelation it says that is a woman with no husband and calls herself a queen. So there is a religious aspect to the woman riding on the political aspect of the beast. religious, and political combined. When people say that the woman is the, I don't know, Rome, that's not completely accurate. It's the Roman religious system. The beast is the Roman political system.
Yes.
Those two things are combined. That's why when she fornicates with the kings of the earth, she's committing bestiality. She's fornicating on all the beasts. She's like riding on all the beasts.
Yeah,
That's
she
what he
she worships all of them.
exactly, and
All of them.
she's fornicating with them.
Yes.
She's making them rich. So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, yeah, go ahead. What you was gonna say?
No, I completely understand when you say talk about a political and a religious system that has taken over the whole earth, you know, and
Right.
and so many, like, I would wonder, is like, why, like, the way that most countries are built and the way that they function, they kind of function the same way,
Yeah.
but it all leads back to the way that Rome was ruling. And it
Yes.
talks about how the, like, in the following chapter, it talks about how the beast would he would flatter us, and he would, that's how he's gonna, you know, like,
Later, yeah. In Daniel chapter 11, it talks about that this wicked one would work not in front, but will deceive us by flattery.
Yes.
So it's not going to be in the forefront. Look at me, which we see a lot of these religious nations, Islam and Judaism, is in the forefront of the media.
Yes.
But
And when you look at it, like how the Judaism and everything that follows up with it, you know, like all the religions that follow up with it, and then you look at Arabia, or the covenant that is in bondage, Jerusalem and Arabia, and everything that follows up with Islam, and you just see the fruits that it shows,
right,
from the get-go. But I was looking into the how Rome actually started, and there was this man, I think he was the third emperor. He was actually listening to a spirit who were giving him laws.
That's Emperor Constantine.
No, that was way before Constantine. That's like because Rome was,
he was the third emperor. Or
that was about like a myth about Rome starting with twins. And one Romus and Romulus, I think that's the name.
Romulus was the first emperor.
Yes, so I think that was the one that followed him, or the third one. That was, he institutioned the title, even Pontifex Maximus, and he institutioned the laws and everything else. But he was literally saying that it's like a spirit will come to him, and it was a spirit of the wilderness. So then all of these, the way that government was formed, it has been like coming down through generations, even till today. You know, even that title, you know, Pontifex Maximus, is like, where did that come from? That's the root of it.
You know who's called the pontiff?
Yes, I don't agree to the name Pope, because there's only one father. Pope means I won't call him father.
That guy, the guy over there in Rome, he's called everything that's from Rome. It's all right. We know we have a book of Romans, right? If you look in the book of Acts, this is the last place that Paul evangelized. The last place Paul evangelized was Rome. The Rome, right after it was pagan Rome, they had this, the corruption was already growing. Paul actually says that iniquity was already growing amongst the believers. You see what I'm saying? So he was saying that there has to be a falling away from the believers, 2 Thessalonians. And this was a letter to not only to the Jews, but also to the Greek believers. It was the Greek believers in Rome that gained power in Rome, and they adopted the Roman culture. They adopted the Roman paganism and brought it in. As they gained more power, they started to smash everything else. That's why it says that they were partly strong, partly broken, and they broke into pieces and they bruised. This is how they worked. As the Roman Greek church was growing, the Roman Empire gave them authority to destroy everything that was against what they said, what they believed. The Emperor Constantine, the Emperor Justinian, they all gave the army over to the Catholic Church, or to the Roman bishop, that's what he was called at that time, in order to execute everything that was against their religious views. That's talking about, well, all believers actually was father and son messianic Torah keepers anyway, because they all came from that aspect.
And that's what the falling away actually means.
And that's where the falling away was, because the falling away occurred. They grew in power because they united themselves with the political authority at that time, which was Rome. And here's the crazy part. And you can look this up, after the Roman Emperor Justinian died, it was the Roman Church that assumed authority, and they're the ones that chose the next emperors. They're the ones that put Charlemagne into the emperor's position in Rome. So Rome. So
it's like the mother thrown in her prince.
Oh yeah, because when you look through history, every single king had to submit to the Roman authority.
Yeah.
Every king. England had to submit. Germany had to submit. Every nation, every king had to submit to the Roman.
And it's still the same today.
Still happening today.
And it's still happening today.
Well, they all need to see the Pope.
Every single president needs to have meetings with him. The G8 summit has to have conferences with him. He has to go to every religion. It was the Romans that had to go to Jerusalem to meet with them, to connect them with the Palestinians.
But I also see the connection with also the Roman with the Pope, and also with the Jews of today. Because a lot of times when when it comes to the political president, they always constantly go into Israel. The Jews, the Jews are constantly there in the forefront when it comes to the presidents too.
Yeah, you can't.
So there's a connection between the two.
But you can't negate the Jews. You're right. You can't negate the Jews, but you can't negate any worldly influential power.
I agree.
You can't.
But I believe they're all mixed together anyway.
Yeah, you have to involve all of them. But the emphasis, when we're looking at prophecy, the emphasis is the iron. It's the iron that continues all the way to the end. You know what I'm saying? The iron goes all the way to the end until the iron is destroyed. And when we go to Daniel 7, we're going to see that same beast is the last beast. And when we go to Revelation, we're going to see that same beast is the last beast. So we have to at least say that the last controlling power, not necessarily saying the only controlling power, but the last controlling power has to be Rome.
And here's my thing with it, which again I agree with that, but I feel like it's important to acknowledge, just like with the chest and the arms, there's two parts to that kingdom. There's Media and there's Persia. Just going down to the legs, you can either say because it has 2 legs, 2 feet, or the fact that it's 2 substances. It's iron, but it is also with the miry clay. There's either way you look at it, there's 2 parts to that kingdom. It's not just iron, it's not just Rome. It's Rome, iron with miry clay. And so you guys are talking about like the forefronts, okay? You guys mentioned that the Catholic Church is always in the forefront. People who don't even believe in the truth believe that the Catholic Church is the beast, which I'm not necessarily negating, but I don't want to put blinders on and look at just them. I'm looking at everything to see what would match, because again, Rome is clearly the beast, and they are that's the thing. They are Rome. They are Rome. So it's not to say Rome is both parts of the system. We can't say Rome and the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is Rome. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about Rome. That is the power of Rome.
It's not. It's 2 separate systems put together.
Yeah.
You can't say it's the same system.
The Roman Church is 2 entities. Right? See, like the Roman Church is actually, if you look at the Vatican. The Vatican is its own state.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Rome is actually a different. Rome is actually a different entity than the Roman Church. The Roman Church and Rome are combining.
It's the same as the White House. Like Washington D.C. It's not the same as the rest of the states, but it's still part of America. It's still America, but it's its own sovereign whatever land. It's the same thing. The Vatican is
Not the same thing, and
Technically,
that's
Washington D.C. is not its own sovereign land.
right. Maybe the United Nations. You're talking about the United Nations, like even though it's in the United States, it's not considered.
So I didn't hear you say it again.
What do you? Because the White House isn't technically a sovereign state at all. It's actually
Talking about talking about DC, the District of Columbus, basically.
Yeah.
It's not a sovereign state or sovereign land.
You know what a sovereign land is? In New York, the United Nations.
Yeah.
The United Nations is not a part of the United States, even though it's in New York. So, like that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, I'm not talking. I'm not like where Washington D.C. Here in America, Washington D.C. is the same as the Vatican and Rome. It's still part of the United States, but it's its own thing.
It isn't though. So it isn't. It's not a
It
sovereign.
is. It has its.
Well, here's the thing. Does it have a military base within it? Does it have cops, government cops? If it does, it is not a sovereign piece of land.
Like the Vatican, they have their own army. It's their.
I mean, the Disney World has their own police. Like
no, the difference is this: the Washington D.C. is not sovereign. It's not like, for example, the UN. The UN in New York, that is a sovereign piece of land. No cops whatsoever can enter that property. That's an American police officer, or no American military personnel can enter into that property unless they're the UN itself. Washington D.C. is not that whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. It is true.
Washington D.C. is not sovereign. Nowhere is it sovereign whatsoever. It is actually not even considered a state of itself.
Well, that's what I didn't mean sovereign. That's what I was saying. It's not considered a state. It's its own. I don't know what the word is. That's why I said sovereign. I don't know what the word is.
But I get what Mike is saying.
I see what you're saying, but it's not the same as the Vatican. The
Vatican is its own
country,
because I mean, Italy still has its own. I think it's president that it has a president, but then there's Rome is separated. It's a small state that is separated.
No, Vatican City.
The Vatican City is its own country.
It's its own country, and the Pope is the king of that country.
But it's still in Italy. That's how
it's in Italy, but Italy has no jurisdiction in Vatican City.
And
it's
Vatican
its own country, and the Pope is the king of that country. And the Pope has an army in that country called the Vatican Army, and nobody can touch them. And they're one of the richest countries.
Yeah, the United Nations is its own entity.
United Nations is its own entity.
Everywhere they go, they basically are in control. It's basically all nations throughout the world are gathered together with that one entity. Right. They can fight anything.
And the Vatican is just like the United Nations. So the United Nations have multiple nations coming together to have this immunity against anything in this building, that they can do whatever and declare whatever for all the nations. And the Vatican works exactly like that. Israel does not work like that. They do not work like the Vatican or United Nations. They do not even work independent from embassies that put themselves in Jerusalem. Like United States, they put themselves there, and Israel, you can't do nothing to United States. You can't move the embassy. You can't put an embassy in Vatican City. You can't.
And again, that. All that stuff, again, you know how I feel about the media, which, you know, and we know where the media even comes from, pressure. Like the whole media point is the same ancient tactics that they use, passed down. Anyways, one big area that I disagree with a lot of people who say that it is, cause I'm not completely against it being the Roman Catholic Church, but when we imply that the Roman Catholic Church has more world power than, say, the state of Israel, I highly disagree with that. I think it's mediaized the Roman Catholic Church has more power and authority.
What media?
At the end of the day, what truly, as far as carnally, what truly controls people, what truly controls nation, we know that to be money. Money is power in this carnal world, and we know who controls the money. We know who is behind the scenes, not up front about everything, but behind scenes.
You're referring to Zionism.
Absolutely.
They come on.
The
Like
same
I
people
said,
who are also a part of this Catholic Church. The same, like I said, I personally believe that it's the Zionists that were behind Catholicism in Rome, the Hellenized Jews. That's personally what I believe, and actually going to some of these writings. What's his name? Josephus and all these other people. You kind of see that. You see the influence that the
all right,
Jews had.
look at this. Here's why the Ashkenazis cannot be the clay, because they were never the potter's clay.
Well, I don't necessarily say Ashkenaz.
I think he's talking about the system of.
The
I think it's big.
The Zionist was never clay at all. You have iron mixed with clay. Zionist was never potter's clay. So you can never put Zionists, which I know what you're talking about when you say that. Wicked people behind the scenes controlling the money, controlling the land. They are not potter's clay. So you cannot put them in
Of course they're not. They're not now. People are now. Because
no. They never were. They never
because
were.
what you're saying,
There was never a
what
time
you're saying
where you
implies
can point
that.
out. 1 second, Mike. There was never a time where you can point out that they once followed Yah, and now they do not.
How do you say that?
No, I said you cannot point that out.
That's what I'm saying. Like how do you, because I don't understand how you say that. Well, like what do you mean?
The system, the way that the system was set up. Well, let's close this first. Let's close. So this is the Daniel chapter 2. We're gonna recap another time, possibly next week, to kind of get some clarification. Shalom.